To whom do we
Yes.
speak?
This is Colum, you may say.
Yes, thank you.
Column. We use this image of a column to allow this one to connect. So therefore, column is appropriate.
And I had a question about changes that are going on. I do not know whether they are specific to my experience or whether they are the experience of many or all, but it seems a very changeable and tumultuous time.
Yes. Yes. From our perspective, we see you as acrobats, the somersaults, the balancing, the ability to fall. This is one of the key factors. Your civilizations at this present moment often call it failure. This is a misappropriation of energy
Mhm.
practice. There are no failures. Energy never fails,
Hmm.
ever. There is always energy. The substratum, stratum, through which we as well find ourselves. This is irrefutable. That is your ground. As you, particularly, David, you are an energy worker, much
Hmm.
like Penny, much like all of us, Kiren, Sue. We are energy, and we choose to work. Remember this. This is a choice. You spoke earlier of this thing called rent, this boundary,
Hmm.
what you experience as a boundary horizon. This is here for you to work with.
Hmm.
In other circles, this is called the edge,
Hmm.
a learning edge, a cutting edge, a bleeding edge. There are many forms of edges. There are pleasures to encounter at the edge. There are fears to encounter at the edge. The fear of falling.
Hmm.
Note the shift from fall to fail. Should you approach this edge with fail, there will be shame, there will be guilt, there will be a host of shadows, shall we say, shadow experiences. In order to maintain the energy, it is important to shift the words in your world. You have a predominant reliance on what you call words, which are one manifestation of frequency sound. Use your manifestations of frequency sound to shift from fail to perhaps fall. This is but one example.
Hmm.
And as you fall, understand there is no bottom.
Hmm.
Enjoy the fall, enjoy the flight. There is another shift. Add a means of propulsion to the fall, and you have fly.
Hmm.
These perceptive shifts are what you must engage in, must, can, it is your choice. These are the exercises in you discerning direction. This is part of the task of being human. This is discerning direction, not direction outwardly manifested, although that will come to pass. The direction is one of inner positioning. This requires examination and most certainly observation. We have brought this up in the past. Observe, serving. Money's energy comes from service, service to evolution, service in your world to humanity. We serve evolution. You serve evolution as well, but from your perspectives, it is humanitarian. Does this suffice?
Yeah, it is. It is very helpful. Thank you. There are some interesting details, though, I would like to ask about.
Mm.
So, one of the things that it feels like is going on for me is there is a degree of faith. That is, I have to change as I'm making the change, trust in the universe enough so that the rent will be paid. Is that what is occurring?
This is precisely the exercise we engaged for this one a matter of days ago. The shift from anxiety to trust.
Yes.
Yeah. The gulp. You may gulp. For it can appear as a chasm.
Mm.
A chasm. But again, it is a product of practice. Nonetheless, and this is where we are careful to relate to connectivity, it is important for each of you to have actual living beings in your spheres with whom you can model trust,
Mm.
with whom you can activate those emotions within your heart and, of course, your soul. These modifications that bring bing, it is like a sound, it is a frequency that sounds in your hearts. And this is initiated by many, many factors, but one of which is human connection. Make this conscious, practice trust, bring trust into exercises. Very often we have spoken with this one about the ability to trust yourself. Perhaps in your pedigrees, you have not had the opportunity to model trust in a familial environment, in a friendship environment, a community environment, a workplace environment. And if you, as a growing organism, have not been able to practice with those around you in a learning environment, it will be difficult to internalize that trust as you become an adult.
Mm.
Examine this. We do not ask ever for faith, ever. Faith, as you have said, is blind. That is one of the attributes of your definition for the term. Trust, however, again, we are dealing with nuances.
Mm.
Trust, however, is much more empowering, shall we say. Faith renders one helpless. This is not the model for the evolution of your species. Trust yourself first and foremost. Evolution originates in your DNA, as you
Mm.
call it. the helix, the spiral. These are universal constructs. These are not outside yourself, these mechanisms. Practice the trust within, and then it will manifest through your observations. Is this sufficient?
Yes, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Trust, faith, faith, trust. This is, as you call it, a sticky wicket.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
A sticky wicket. However, the bars are quite wide.
Hmm.
You can pass through. There is no need to feel a sense of helplessness.
Could you
This
say
is,
more about this helplessness?
yes, this is a construct. Over the centuries, helplessness has become a operative tool in order to depotentiate your own self-realization. You are, each and every one of you, sheer potential. And that potency, when you engage in the attitude, when one, we shall say, pronouns are often difficult. When one engages in an attitude of helplessness, very often it appears to that person that forces are on the outside coming in.
Hmm.
I am helpless. I have no power. I have no ability. I cannot. I will not. I am not. I am not. And the outer, shall we say, material world becomes, you might say, overwhelming. Your outer world, shall we say, becomes othered. You are dealing with this now on a global level, othering.
Hmm.
You are abdicating your powers to others, whether
Hmm.
that is graphically, mainly material, or in your own minds. The effect is the same. This helplessness is a scourge. The crops will run dry. The waters are required for life. Helpful. The fullness of help surrounds you, and the barriers to that are legion.
Hmm.
This, you may say, saddens us. And yet at the same time, we understand that this is a trigger. We will step back into the image of that oyster and the particle of sand. It begins as an irritant. This is a call for attention, something which is constantly irritating you. And this is a decision that each decision, Tiyuka, this is an observation you all must make for yourselves. Irritations are legion. Pick one, perhaps. Perhaps it is, we shall not say. That is for you. Pick this irritation, bring it into your heart in an attitude of safety, of sufficiency, of proficiency, sufficiency. Bring that irritant into your nest and cultivate that gem. For that irritant is a tiny rupture that joins the material and the mind. It is the beginning of a great knowing, but you must have the wherewithal to separate yourself from the pain. You must cultivate a means of putting space between you and your irritant. This space is designed for reflection. Having instantiated that space, you may prefer to simply observe. For this irritant, once consciously observed, may prove enormously entertaining, interesting. There may be facets to the irritant that you had not considered. And as you engage with this irritant, learn to understand, to open onto what the irritant has to tell you. Can you hear this?
Yes.
This reverberates on many, many levels and throughout many dimensions. The irritants.
So, on the subject of control, the question is, and others have asked me, are there negative forces? That is, are there negative forces in the universe or here on Earth that are in opposition to good? Let's just say that. Is
Mm.
there an active shadow working against us in the universe and on Earth?
Let us call this shadow an irritant.
Yes.
Mm. Let us bring this into a manageable frame. Notice that as you speak and one's words form, listen to those words and how one presents one's fears, how one frames one's anxieties. For in this case, the irritant might begin in the heart of an individual, and in an instant, it has become a dark force on the earth.
Hmm.
There is a huge continuum here, a vast one. But there is a leap that has been made which must be recognized. There is a collapsing here of self, where self is now identified with material forces. It is important not to map one's internal landscape onto the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tools for this, but again, it requires a great deal of thought, observation, right? These very forces which you refer to are precisely what your forces want you to think. Does this make sense? That habit, that
Mm-hmm.
habit of helplessness is the underlying condition through which these forces, dark forces, as you have articulated, these dark forces are empowered by that very sense of helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, as you call it, a red circle, a closed loop, and one can be entirely overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
The intellectualization of your own interior states is dangerous.
So, if I'm to have a client, and the
Mm,
client would say to me that they feel there are these opposing forces that are
mm,
limiting them or harming them
mm,
or appear
mm,
evil, if you
Mm,
will.
mm.
This is really their externalization of an interior process. Is that?
Correct. That is
Yes.
correct. That is
Uh,
correct. And the means they feel they are as if in a vise.
mhm,
This is pressure. This is disease. This is it there. And we mean no judgment here. We mean
mhm,
this in the sense of dis-ease, of they are not at peace. The one aspect of this for them is to find peace. It does not need to be world peace. Their obsession, observing their obsession is your privilege. They are granting access for you, Dave, into their landscape of helplessness.
mhm,
And therefore, you are called to empower them.
mhm,
You are not called to fight the fight against the forces. Do not allow yourself to be hooked into this drama.
mhm,
That is not your role. These are not your gifts. It is flattering. We understand that. We all understand that. This one understands that. We all do. The role of the white knight, the savior, the one who sets it right.
mhm,
We all know that. We know that. And we accept it. However, to be driven by this force and this force only shall only lead to, you say, burn out,
mhm,
mm, dwindle. There will be a dwindling. No being can live with that daimon. That is the
mhm,
demon in
mhm,
reverse. In reverse. Do you feel
mhm.
that?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Mm, mm. So it is a matter of managing energies.
Mhm,
It is that.
mhm,
Images, use images. Drop into synchronicity. Drop into controlled experiments with synchronicity.
mhm,
Walk into a bookstore and this one has done, treat the bookstore as a Ouija board. Step in, allow a text to speak to you.
mhm,
Go to a book, go online, allow your thoughts to drift. Open onto this plenitude. Allow the plenitude to speak through you. The doubts, there are many who doubt based on their families, based on their environments. Enable these people, for they are people, to recognize their doubts in trust. We do not use the term faith, we use the term trust. Allow them to observe when they become shaky, shall we say, when they consider themselves under pressure. Enable them to recognize their own duress. We touched upon this earlier. Your dress. This is an image which may prove useful. Your dress, your duress, your stress. Are you in armor? Are you naked? Why is it you feel vulnerable? How is that possible? Sitting in your room under your roof. food in your refrigerator. How is that possible? Become curious, ask, inquire. This is the antithesis of faith. It shall be there, this faith you call it, but perhaps it is more of a gem. This process of discovering your ground, your vessel, if we are to speak of this group, is as much tuning to other powers as it is to your own power. And a certain rueful humor is much appreciated. Here I go again. We speak often, we can hear this with this one. We shall mimic her voice. Oh, there she goes. There I go again. There, I'm tapping into her. She is so familiar with this. That is how we speak, is because we hear her familiarity, her familiarity. She observes, and in that space of observing, this is where we step, where we are. We are that higher self. That aperture is how we connect. But you must take that step into observance to give us the room and eventually the permission, the collegiality, if you shall call it that, the familiarity. We are your family in the largest sense possible. They are here with us. This is where mediumship and channeling coalesce. We are all here, waiting, listening, playing, witnessing.
Thank you. That was very profound. Thank you.
Very, very interesting. You've mentioned this sort of manifestation. I do manifestation in a particular way. There are people like Abraham Hicks who are talking about this manifestation. My manifestation goes a little bit more towards the heart and sort of expanding the heart. Is this just something that works for me, or is this really what people like Abraham Hicks are doing?
The lens is with you. The lens is with Abraham Hicks.
Hmm.
We are, all of us, messengers. None of us pretend to be omnipotent.
Mm.
And if we do, there is something there which bears consideration. The omnipotence is found in connectivity. And therefore, we must tease out omnipotent, this power. There is a difference between self-aggrandizement and the omnipotency of connectivity. Whew, these words are making her mouth anxious. But you see these two sides to the equation. They equal one another, but you must have an eye on both sides. Your manifestation for yourself is born in connectivity. You cannot manifest without an appreciation of all. That connectivity to others, to energy, to the substratum, to all these words you are encountering in your sciences, spooky entanglement and a 0 point energy. This goes on and on and on. Everyone has known about this for millennia. The words change with every civilization. Once that civilization becomes aware, this is just cyclical. But without that awareness of the effects and taking responsibility for those effects, there shall be no manifestation.
Can you say more about this effects and manifestation?
In other words, let us use an image from nature, as this is your nature. This is the cosmological nature, if you will, of all. If you plant a seed and the roots, let's say this seed is your intent, and that seed is whole and good. And you plant that seed in an environment of community, in an environment of trust, in your heart, and that soil is trust, support. This is the soil. You plant that seed, and that seed starts to sprout both up and down in many dimensions, David. This is not just a three-dimensional seed. This is a multitudinous dimensional seed. It is the seed of energy, as is the seed in your 3 dimensions. This is the practice. This is how you learn. And you take that seed and you plant that seed and it begins to grow, and the tendrils, whether up or down, around, they root and they perhaps disappear. Perhaps there are other things that take your time, or perhaps there are other concerns, or perhaps you simply put that seed in the ground and you can no longer see it. Seed. It has been seed. You have seen. You have recognized. You have connected your intention to grow in trust. And those roots, those tendrils, they may disappear, and yet they may resurface. In your world, this is through time. You wait perhaps a day, a month, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, an hour. This is time, and perhaps you do not see. It is not seed, but it comes up. And there it is again. It doesn't appear to be connected, does it? For you do not see the connections. You are working in time. Time obfuscates those connections. You forget. You have but a memory. And yet there it is again. And at some level, there is a vibratory tone within you. And you understand at some level those seeds which are seen and seeded are now connected. And that second seed may be happening in your world in what you call the future. And you must see that seed in order to understand the connection with the first seed. If you do not see the seeds, you will not understand the connection. And so it is, many of you speak of luck, as if it were some unknown, unseen force, but it is not. You speak of those who feel unimaginable terrors of unseen forces, and yet they are not. The cultivation here is seen. The seeds, seeing the seeds, engaging with the cultivation. That is evolution. This is a broad image. Have we gone too far?
No, this is very useful.
It is the awareness. It is so powerful, so very powerful. And at one point, you will learn to observe from, to live from awareness. Once you have stepped into awareness, the seeds start popping. This one was roasting sesame seeds last night, and she could hear the pop, 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 pop of the
Hmm.
seeds.
Hmm.
Note the energy input and how those seeds burst open with energy. It is how you direct your energy.
Is this what you mean by awareness?
Yes, yes. Awareness is the perspective that enables you to direct the energy.
Hmm.
Now, awareness, as in Penny's positioning, a stepping back, and this one as well, it may be perceived as, you might say, passivity, but it is an engaged passivity. It is a stepping back, waiting, being at peace can be the result of much work. The quality of that awareness, of that stepping back, you have a dialogue here, for there is the awareness in you, which you can then dialogue with, but there also is an awareness that is aware of phenomena. And that awareness can dialogue with phenomena and choose which phenomena with which to engage. This strengthens the awareness in your acknowledgement of what is happening. It opens your heart onto vast horizons. There is a modality of humility involved here. But again, it is not faith, it is trust. Trust the process. And as your anxiety surfaces, as your fear surfaces, as whatever irritant, remember that, irritant comes to mind, just take one at a time and become aware of that. What happened to you, David, with this forgetting? That is an emergency function. Your forgetting was an emergency fallback for the future. One should be able, should we do not go there with that terminology, there is a modality within which you need not forget. There is no onus to forget. It is all known. And there is no need to forget to take refuge. We understand the necessity for that. It is a sign of stress. It is not an initiative. It is something which dwells and reveals itself from your unconscious in order to survive because you are under such stress. This is a reptilian function which can be useful and which you found useful. But in the process of evolution, we are moving away from reptilian and into other modalities where we can see the reptilian and we can understand it and we can be with that should it prove to be an irritant. You see? There is no room here for overwhelming forces. You see?
Almost But perhaps you could tell me again. I think I missed what you meant by forgetting.
Mm. This happens, we have observed this with this one, when the schedule builds up, when she feels she is inundated with requests, with
Yes.
tasks, there is a fail-safe function that switches to on, and she will forget.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, that forgetting is an unconscious means of alleviating stress,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
tension, tension.
But it might be just absolutely necessary for her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is why we say reptilian. It is a primordial, we shall not say primitive, for that carries so many connotations in your world. However, we shall say primordial.
Yes.
But note what it has to come to in order for that primordial activity to reignite. The idea here through evolution is to work with the reptilian consciously, with understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yet this function is occurring in her world as an emergency response. She is not controlling it, it
Mm-hmm.
controls her. The reptilian is controlling her at that moment. And this is where we ask you to step back and ask what part of her is being controlled and what part of her has allowed this reptilian earlier, shall we say, certainly forceful, yet not conscious in the sense that she prefers. How has that come in without her awareness?
Mm-hmm.
This is the level of observation which we require. And we shall call this toward an end. The circuits are becoming a little bit thin, and we do not want to do any harm. Do you have one more question, perhaps, before we reside?
I do. I'm curious to know. The work that I'm doing is specific because I am channeling and I am also dealing with the earthly problem of politics.
Mm,
It has been suggested by some channelers that I leave these politics behind.
mm,
But there has also been suggested that it is not exactly politics, it is more comforting people to know that it will work out. So
mm,
I am on the fence here to know whether the politics
mm,
are helpful now or whether
mm,
they're bringing me down to
mm,
a lower
mm.
vibration.
This is laudable. David, you have your finger on your own pulse, which is much appreciated. Your finger on your pulse enables others to do the same.
Mm,
Checking in with one's self is inordinately important. The question is that of dynamics.
mm,
Mm. And where you seek to position yourself in the midst of this dynamic.
mhm.
Mm. Dynamite.
Yeah.
Mm. You see, you can hear, take this. You are fighting with reassurance before the flame. But in order to reassure, you yourself must become comfortable with the flame.
Mm,
You must understand it and you must know it. Therefore, it would help to delve deeper into the dynamic which illuminates yourself. We will use the word here that this one has understood as trigger. Trigger. You remember your hero, Roy Rogers.
Hmm.
There was a horse named Trigger. This is the horse, the steed, which Roy Rogers rides. You are that hero, dear David. You fashion yourself as a hero, and all of us are that. Some of us fashion ourselves differently. Again, the dress, the duress. The trigger here is your horse, your desire. What shall you do with your desire? And how to craft that desire in a form that is at once enabling, effective, and feminine.
Hmm.
The inclusiveness of your desire is noted with love. However, the inclusiveness of your desire makes it that much more forceful and that much more felt. The answer lies within you to position yourself without understanding that these forces are greater than you. This is the linchpin for you. There is nothing greater than you,
Hmm.
not in the sense with which we understand each other and in this group. Yes, of course, you die. All of you humans die. All organisms, in some sense, die. We prefer to see it as renewal. When you sleep, you die, you renew. The positioning there, then, David, is with this sense of helplessness. This is where you must do your work. Why is it? How is it that you feel overwhelmed by other forces?
Hmm.
There may be an element of drama in this presentation, which is attractive. So be it. You can present drama and yet understand at the same time it is precisely that drama. This requires a measure of spiritual maturity so that again you are always observing from your higher self, we call it in this group, your higher place. And when you fall, you're not failing. When you fall from that higher place, then enact your wings. Enable them to grow. Cultivate your personal practice. Learn. There are books. There are classes. There are, what you are doing, David, requires support. You cannot do this alone.
Hmm.
That is impossible in this form as a human terrestrial. This is what you need to, and perhaps have come to, explore amidst all your differences, amidst all your senses of separations, alienations, the ignorance that you feel, and this one as well often feels surrounds her, must be met with compassion.
This is very useful. Thank you so much.
Mm.
Yes, thank you.